Last weekend in New Zealand, from Christchurch, decided to book a train, the Great Journeys of New Zealand. It's their main tourism train. There's a few options from Canterbury or from Christchurch. To be precise, you can go across the Southern Alps of the South Island, and that's the most famous one that crosses the mountain range and ends up on the Tasman coast city of Greymouth. But I opted on taking the Pacific coastal route. 5-6 hour train, leaves early morning and goes up mostly along the Pacific coast, so it does go inland a little bit in the first part of it, but it ends up going through North Canterbury region in Marlborough province and ends up at the harbor of Picton, which is where you would typically board a ferry to go to Wellington to the North Island. But yeah, I think the train ticket was like, it must have been like $100 or something like that. They're usually expensive, these tourist things, but they're definitely worth it, especially if you have a limited time and you want to get the most scenery in one go and not stress about it. You know, originally I was like, should I rent a car, which would have been crazy expensive, you know, drive, go at my own pace, but then of course you got to worry about insurance and always be alert and safety. But taking a tourist train is really nice. You can just enjoy the scenery from the safety of a car and just take in the views, and that's what I did. And so yeah, as you can see, the initial part of the train ride, it's going up in North Canterbury. You're not right off the ocean yet. That doesn't happen until about a few hours in, but you get to see a lot of the rolling plains and foothills over here that are mostly grazing land for cattle and sheep. And of course you have some vineyards the further north you go there. You probably noticed by now that this video is well over 15 minutes, and I'll be darned if I'm going to sit here and try to narrate each little scenic frame here where we're at. You know, the good thing about these trains, and this train in particular, is there's a audio guide. Whenever you reach a point of interest, they provide you headphones and they'll tell you a little bit of background and context about where you are. So definitely recommend it. But I want to take this opportunity to kind of go into story time and talk a little more freely about stuff I know. And being that this is on the theme of New Zealand, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of reflect on the handful of Kiwis I've known in my life and the stories that I could possibly tell to you all here about those people. So I haven't known a lot of Kiwis or New Zealanders in my time, but I do remember the handful of them that I have met. So I'll try to go ahead and tell you about each of them. So we'll start with the first one that I recall ever meeting, and this was, I must have been 18 or 19 years old. I had just relocated to Thailand at that time, and I was about to take up a new job in the province of Phetchaburi, and I had done some little bit of traveling in the south of Thailand before that point. Wanted to get it out of my system because I knew I had a job lined up and I'd be focusing on work. And this would have been in, I want to say 2002, early 2002. So I had reached Phetchaburi, and as I usually do when I'm scoping out a new job or a new place, I like to be independent and do it on my own, and then just meet my potential employer on an even plane. So I ended up booking myself into a guest house. I know I could have had the option. My employer, my potential employer, was going to pick me up and like provide me somewhere to stay and all that. But again, I wanted a little bit more freedom there, going in there on an even plane. So I opted to stay in a guest house, and that would have been the Rubian Guest House, which is on the Phetchaburi River. And there, I met the first New Zealander that I ever recall ever meeting. His name was Damien. He was a backpacker, and he had a guitar. I played guitar too. I think I had my own guitar, and so the guest house was a typical like backpackers type hostel. You know, they had like a commons area, some bunking area, bedrooms with bunk beds and cheap accommodations, and a world map of all the global travelers. But he had a guitar, and there wasn't any other backpackers. There was just him, and then the Thai lady who owned it, her friend, her cousin, not sure exactly, there. And we were just kind of like, we ate at the restaurant, had some beers in the restaurant, and we exchanged through music. So my first exposure to the Kiwis, and not the last, of course, would have been music. You know, they're very musically inclined, the Kiwis that I've met, and so he was playing a few good jams, showed me some tunes, and I remember teaching him the Beatles tune, A Day in the Life.
Dolphin and the New Zealand fur seal, which you will find sunbathing out on the rocks.
Just to stop real quick, here you can see the Pacific Ocean. We finally made it to the Pacific Ocean, so very majestic views there. It's, the South Island is technically a temperate climate, but you do have the ocean here in certain parts that seem like a tropical beach. There's emerald green waters, and then, of course, just on the other side of the ocean, you have these snow-capped peaks, and this is going into spring and summer, mind you. All right, so back to the story here. So yeah, I met Damien, and he was pretty cool. A few days that I had allocated there for that trip, hang out. We went around. We went to some waterfalls and some tourist sites. I can't really recall. It was pretty hazy at those days, and we're enjoying the little life. And he was really down to earth fellow there, the kind of guy that I could get along with. Of course, my employer was like, "Where are you? Are you in town yet?" And my potential employer at the time, and so I definitely made contact with them after a few days of hanging out at the guest house, doing the tourist thing. Because prior to that, I never really had any backpacker experience. I went right into it. Thailand, I was spending a lot of time in those days seeking out my roots and my family, and so I didn't really have much experience as the backpacker scene. A lot of people in those days, especially Thailand, was one of the backpacker havens where they would just go to like Khao San Road, and they'd end up at the island somewhere in the Gulf of Thailand, or even in the Andaman Sea down there, Picot, PP, all those places. And I kind of skipped over all that. I didn't really have that, except for this one window prior to me taking up this job, hanging out in Phetchaburi, which wasn't really a part of the backpackers trail, but obviously this guy Damien had already been to the islands. He went to Samui and all the famous islands in Thailand, as one would do if you were a backpacker, and he wanted a little bit of I guess a little bit something different, a little more on the Thai path, not necessarily on the backpacker scene. And it was a guest house, mind you, but it wasn't like I said, it wasn't a big backpacker scene, just like kind of off the beaten path a little bit. So I met him there, and we hung out and played jams, and that was that. And then my employer they needed more work. They were like basically a English teacher agency, so they were just bringing in English teachers from all over the Western world and giving them jobs in local temple schools, and they were like, "Oh, you got a friend there, maybe he wants to work too." And I was like, "Oh yeah, he's pretty cool, that would be kind of cool." And I was really getting along with him, kind of like, "Oh, this is gonna be a good friendship." But of course Damien wasn't having any of that. He's like, no thanks, I'm fine where I'm at. He definitely didn't want to get right into work. He still had plans to travel. He was going to go around Southeast Asia and do the whole thing that you do when you're early 20s, late teens, as a free backpacker. And so he was a free spirit. He said thanks but no thanks, and I ended up going on to my job, and then that's tales for another day. But yeah, that was the last I saw of Damien. But it was a really nice guy, really short and sweet meeting, and really good friend he could have been. And that was my first impression of New Zealanders. So yeah. Okay, so now on to the second New Zealander that I ever recall meeting, and this would be fast forward to about 2008. I had already started university in the early 2000s, and then I took a break for work and came back, and this is in Bangkok, University International College, so it was about 2008, 2009. And I remember a few times meeting this guy named Aaron in the BUIC, Bangkok University International College office often, because he stuck out because he could speak pretty fluent, almost perfect Thai, even better than myself, I would say, at the time. And he would always be interacting with the office staff in Thai. And he was a complete Westerner-looking guy. Nothing about him said that, I grew up in Thailand or anything like that, but he could speak pretty good Thai. And so I remember that about him. I never really got friendly with him. To be honest, I think he liked his sausages with steaks. I don't know how to say it outright, but but he wasn't in the sense that he was out like flamboyant or anything like that. You couldn't really tell, but you could tell, being in social circles, what preferences certain people had in terms of what floats their boat, if you know what I mean. So just real quick here on the screen, this is the stopover at Kaikoura, a really nice town along the coast. Definitely worth going back to someday. Meanwhile, back to the story. BUIC, Bangkok University International College, you get a lot of different types of people mixing and mingling, and the party scene, or at least this was the case back in the 2008, 2009, 2010 era. So yeah, there was many parties that I saw Aaron, ended up meeting Aaron later on. And one party in particular that stands out as far as something that might be worthy of a story to tell is there was one party where we were all hanging out and there was a bunch of different people, and I was really friendly with I had a Japanese friend who was a girl, and we were at the typical, I don't know which party, we were out somewhere at Tongla or Ekamai, one of those dance club. Usually in those days when you're in your early 20s and it's like, okay, where's the after party at? That's where, it's just your warm up party where you're out dancing and partying, and then someone always had an after party at somebody's condo somewhere. And so we were setting up an after party, and then another American guy who actually grew up overseas on a military base in Okinawa, and he actually had like a hip hop crew and image and character, and it was Trix, that's what his name was. So I'm sure he's probably still out there putting out beats and being cool. But anyway, Trix was setting up an after party at his place, and it was like, okay, yeah, cool, we're all there. And then we got Kamiko, she was the Japanese friend I had. Oh, she's gonna go with her Japanese friend, and then it's gonna be a great after party, cool, hang out. But I guess Trix had other ideas. It was me, my Finnish friend Jussi, and then Aaron was like, okay, well, I had a bike at the time. I was very stupid at the time, a motorbike, driving around. It's like, okay, well, we'll meet you at there. Give us that. Oh, okay, well, call us for the address later. So I was just drunk and, going along. And so I had Jussi, and I think I had Kawar, my Pakistani friend, as well with me. And then Aaron was going to join on my bike. Okay, we're going to meet there, and we knew the general area. Give us the exact direction. We'll give it to you, says Trix. And he had gotten a taxi with the girls, the Japanese girls. This after party is going to be cool. We got some Japanese girls, Kamiko. Trix and his crew and his friend, I can't remember his American friend, another guy from Okinawa days. And then they hopped in the taxi with Kamiko. And of course I had Kamiko on the line. Oh, where? She didn't know where the address exactly was, but then they finally got to the after party place, and I'm sitting there on the bike at 3 a.m. Bangkok in the morning, parking on the side of the road, trying to call them. Where's the exact place? Where's the condo? I didn't know, because Trix wasn't my direct friend, so I didn't know exactly where he lived. But Trix obviously was like, nah, we're not having all these guys. We're not gonna have the gay guy Aaron and Steven with his annoying friend Jussi and Kawar come, the boys. It'll be a cockfest. He was obviously cool. That it's like, nah, we'll keep the Japanese girls to ourselves here at this after party for us. And you guys just didn't give us the address, and so we got stood up, and it was kind of like, then by that time we were sobered up. Man, we got stood up. They punked us. But bros over hoes is what the theme of that was after that. But anyway, yeah, nothing happened, and yeah, that was the one time I was hanging out with Aaron. I know it was supposed to be about Aaron, so it doesn't say anything about Aaron, but he was cool. Yeah, we all went our ways, and that was that. And another thing about Aaron, I remember he also had the same exact car I had later on after university. Was a Nissan Envy Wing Road. And so they only made these cars really in Thailand, and really nice little kind of like, I want to say like an El Camino type car, but it's not really an El Camino, but it's basically half truck, half car, 1600cc engine, really efficient. Drove that all around. We loved him. Anybody who owned an NV Wing Road always loved him, always regretted having to sell him after the fact. So yeah, in sum, Aaron was a pretty cool cat. He was one of the best, if not the best, non-native Thai speakers in Bangkok at the time. And of course he drove a cool car later on down the road like I did. And aside from getting punked by Trix and the Oki Zoo crew back in the day, all is good. He showed me, of the Kiwis, they're really cool, regardless of their sexual preference. He wasn't shoving it down my throat, literally or metaphorically. But yeah, cool guy overall. Here we come towards the end of our train trip here. We're already in Marlborough province, if you can see on the screen there. And so yeah, very beautiful scenic ride. And I do have a few more stories, at least one and a half more stories of the few other Kiwis I've met in my time prior to actually coming to New Zealand. I'll mention those two in the next clip. That's coming to the end of this round or this part in a series of my New Zealand trip. And then in the next and final one, I will wrap it up with my brief stopover in the harbor town of Picton, my final impressions and experiences of meeting Kiwis thus far. So thanks for listening and tuning in. We'll catch you again next episode. Bye-bye now.
It's hard to know what you have when you got it. Seems so sad what you had, but you know it's not as bad as you thought it to be. So got it to see what your lot begot, like you thought they rot. Immortality's not for sale. It cannot be bought like you thought. Feeling caught, you fail. You got your shot, yeah, you failed. Lost the plot so well, you let it managed to ravage another savage to grab it.